All right, the final part of our show today, guys, is we are going to Trevor and Brian have put together their top 10 lists of offensive line starting lineups or
It's all
rooms.
of it. I mean,
Okay.
it's primarily about the starting offensive
Okay.
lines because you don't see a lot of rotations. But like, there's a
True.
couple offensive lines that I think have really good depth.
I got you.
That it factors into where I have them. So certainly, because if you don't want to be, well, yeah, this guy's great, but if he goes down, they are in trouble.
Yes.
But it's primarily but it's as a unit essentially.
Right. Okay.
Is
Gotcha.
what the focus is on.
So we're going to roll through this thing. We're going to kind of do it snake style, as they say, and we're going to kind of go back and forth. We're going to start at 10 for both of these guys, and they're going to kind of give their teams as we go and the reasons why that they are where they are. And these lists are a lot different, which is kind of fun. And so we're going to check those out, and then we're going to kind of talk about the list as a whole. I'm going to ask these guys some questions about them once where they're all revealed as to why, hey, Trev, why'd you have this team at number 2? And Brian, you don't even have them on your list at all. I don't know if that's true or not.
That is true.
Oh, okay. Well,
there's several, I think, actually,
okay.
that we have differently, if I remember correctly.
So that is how we're going to do it. And we're going to have some fun with it. If you guys have a top 10 list or teams that you think should be on lists that aren't on lists, or you agree or disagree, put it in the chat. Let's have some fun with it. We'll bring those up as we go as well. But without further ado, Brian, I think we should just jump right in.
I think it's going to be a fun year, Vince. I think there's some very intriguing offensive lines. One of the reasons I think this is going to be a great year at college football. So as I went through all the teams in college football, I actually broke down like 18 or 19 offensive lines that I just kind of viewed as in that group that should be under consideration.
In the discussion, yeah.
Yes, and there's a lot of teams that aren't your typical, I considered the Bama, Notre Dame, A&M, Clemson, Ohio State, but there was also Iowa State, Arizona State, Baylor, Boise State, SMU, Utah, Wisconsin, Illinois. There's like a lot of those teams that you're like, there's some teams that we're talking about, like, how's this team going to be this year that are going to be building their team around really good offensive lines or perceived to be really good offensive lines. And I think that's going to make for a really fun year. But I have my 10 best, and our criteria is we're projecting what will be in 2025. This isn't who are the best 10 going into the season. It's who do we think will be the best 10 when we are looking at this throughout the course of the season. So it's a projection, it's not a preseason top 25 type of ranking. It's a predicting what will be through the course of the season. And that's why I have my number 10 team in here, and that is the Ohio State Buckeyes. If you're going to ask me who are the preseason top 10 teams, I would not have Ohio State on my list because there's a lot of questions. Both of their tackles are likely going to be transfer players. They brought in a kid this offseason from Rice. I'm curious how that progression is going to be. Ethan Onyamwa, big old kid, 6'6", 357, struggled for 2 years as a starter at Rice and then had a really good breakout season last year. Only gave up 1 sack, only 9 total pressures last year. In really his first full year of just kind of being that guy. He's got a lot of potential, a lot of question marks, about him. How's he going to be? Phillip Daniels is transferring in from Minnesota. Can he beat out Austin Sarabeld at right tackle and win the job? Last year's a freshman at Minnesota. He was a pretty good player as a rotation player. He only played 300 snaps last year. But there's a lot of talent there and a lot of size at 6'5", 315. So the tackle position is the question mark for Ohio State, and that's why they would not be in my top 10 preseason. When I look at the projection of it, though, I think at least one of those two guys is going to be a pretty good player, at least solid. They can play Austin Sarabeld there. He may kick out and play some right tackle this year. He played guard for him last year. But I think they'll be good enough at tackle. Where I really like this Ohio State team is I think their interior is going to be pretty good this season. And we started to see that last year. There was a lot of injuries. So you had Seth McLaughlin got hurt end of the year. That Carson Hinsman had to step in the starting lineup. Carson had started a lot in the past. Up and down performance. I don't think that Justin Fry did a great job developing him. I'm hopeful that Tyler Bowen will do a better job developing him, their O-line coach. I like Carson Hinsman a lot. He's played a lot of football now. He has the most snaps played for that team. He's got over 1,300 career snaps. I thought Carson played pretty well in the postseason. We saw Luke Montgomery and Austin Sarabeld get thrust into the rotation in the postseason because when Josh Simmons got hurt at left tackle, they kicked out Donovan Jackson, their All-American caliber left guard, and kicked him out to tackle. So, and then you had obviously Tegra Shabola playing at right guard as well. So there was a lot of moving parts. And I thought by the end of the year, those young kids really started to show something. I thought they performed well against Texas. And I thought they played really well against Notre Dame. Look, simple. We cover Notre Dame. The interior at Ohio State whooped Notre Dame's interior in that game. That's just a fact. They just did. And I was impressed by them. And it was just seeing their steady growth. Now they're going to be veterans. Luke Montgomery's going to his junior year. You've got Austin Saraveld's going to battle for a job either there at right tackle. Carson Hinsman, I think, is ready for a breakout season. So I think these kids are going to be good football players. The key for them, though, is the tackle's got to perform. And Carson Hinsman needs to be as good as I think he's going to be this year. I think he's going to have a nice break. I'm not like a first-round draft pick, but I think he's going to be like a potential third-team all Big Ten type of player this season. And if they get that, then he's going to be just fine. But I really like the makeup of this line, and I like the O-line coach they hired this offseason. So that's why I got the Buckeyes number 10.
My number 10 team is, and we're kind of kicking this off hot, is one of the teams that I think that I could look back at the end of the season and regret not putting them higher on this list. I just have a couple questions for them being shorn up on the offensive line, and it's Iowa. I have Iowa as my number 10 team, and I love what they return. Bo Stevens comes back as their left guard. Logan Jones is returning as center. He has 38 career starts, played over 660 snaps last year. And then their right tackle, Jennings Dunker, comes back. He's a big old kid, 6'5", 316, 25 career starts. I believe Dunker was a third team, and I think Jones was a second team Athlon preseason All-American. And last year they put together a good year. They were Joe Moore Award semifinalists. They were ranked number 24 in the country in sacks allowed. Only allowed 17 sacks all last year. And then they were also number 24 in rushing yards per game and then number 25 in yards per carry at 5.1. Some of my concern with this group, and it's projecting out what Jack Dotzler is going to do at left tackle. 0 career starts. He played in 4 games last year, but only played 16 snaps. He's taking over for Mason Richmond, who was a big reason why they had a really good year pass blocking at Iowa. I mean, he gave up 7 total pressures all season last year, started all of their games at left tackle. And then they're also having to replace Connor Colby, who is their right guard. He allowed 10 pressures last year, only 4 hits plus sacks on the quarterback. And so
first team all Big Ten player.
He was. And so having to replace 2 guys of that caliber, I don't know how well Jack Dotzler and then Cade Piper is going to be the kid stepping in for Connor Colby. And he's 6'4", 290, little bit smaller than what we've seen out of like Iowa guards before in the past, especially considering Connor Colby was 6'6", 310. Like we've seen on Notre Dame's offensive line, it's not all about, how much weight you're carrying with you. Anthony Knapp at 294 as a true freshman was their most dominant run blocker last year at times in the season. So not overly concerned about that, but it is something I'm going to be keeping an eye on. But I didn't want to put them out of my top 10. They were absolutely going to be in it. Some of it, too, is just kind of the tradition of Iowa always just puts together really good offensive lines. And until shown otherwise, I have no reason to believe that Jack Dotzler or Cade Piper aren't going to be able to answer the bell and kind of just step in and replace what was lost last season. I do think I'm going to regret ranking them as low as I did, but they are starting out in my group at number 10.
I have a team near the bottom of my list that I feel the same exact way as you do, Trev, where it's like you put them in there and you're like, I don't feel great about moving them, but I think I'm going to regret that at the end of the year.
Yep. The next team on this list for me is Illinois. They come in at my number 9 slot. And this is an interesting group when I evaluated them. If you just look at their returning numbers, 122 combined career starts. As a unit, they played 3,667 snaps. And I think this is my only group in my top 10 where they return all 5 starters that started all games last season. Just looking at that alone, I'm sure it sparks the question, Trev, how is Illinois not higher on your list? Well, it's because of what they did last season as a unit. They ranked number 97 in sacks allowed last year. They gave up 32 sacks. You look at what they did in terms of their rushing offense, because one thing that I took into account was maybe you weren't great at pass protection, but maybe you were dominant in run blocking. That conversation is going to come to light when we talk about Notre Dame's things that have to get shorn up. but they were number 90 or 79th in college football last year in rushing yards per game at 153. At Irish Breakdown, we also like to look at the efficiency numbers. And they averaged 4.4 yards per carry last year on offense as well. And so just based on experience alone, like we talked about in the first couple segments of today's show, experience along the offensive line, I put big weight into. And Illinois in my top 10 has the second most career starts out of any group that I have ranked. And I think they have like the second most snaps of groups returning in college football in my top 10. But it's because of what that production was is a little bit interesting. And so that's why I couldn't put them any higher. But this unit was also a big reason why Luke Altmaier decided to return and come back to Champaign. And so they are my number 9 team.
I love it, Trev. My number 9 is Arizona State Sun Devils. And this is a team that this is a unit that I like. And I thought about putting them higher. I think what this is a unit that plays well together. I don't know that this is a unit that necessarily is a dominant unit that you just look at them and you're like, boy, that group just, man, boy, that's a group that just goes out there and whoops you. But I also think it's a unit that just kind of does their job, and they just kind of go out every week and they open up run lanes. Last season, you look at what they did statistically last season. Arizona State rushes for 199.9 yards per game, 4.7 yards per carry with Cam Scadaboo. They ranked 4th in the country in sacks allowed per game. I did a thing on my ranking where I put their their rushing yards per game, yards per carry, and sacks allowed together. And there's other stats that I looked at, but these are the ones that, like the 3 that I really dove into. And the looking at it was, okay, where did you rank? So I gave, if you ranked first, you got 1 point. If you ranked second, you got 2 points. And then if you had the fewest points, that meant you were pretty good. Well, on my ranking, Arizona State ranked 6th of all the 19 teams that I considered for my ranking. And so the production last year was outstanding. They were a playoff team. They went from 3-9 to a playoff team. That's super impressive, in my opinion. Bring back basically 4 starters. Not all their starters played every game, but they bring back 4 starters. The issue is the only starter they lost was a first-team All Big 12 guy last year, and he was the only guy that made first or second team All Big 12. What's interesting, some of these leagues do 3 all league teams, like ACC does 3. I think the Big 10 does 3, but the Big 12 and the SEC only do 2. So some of these all honorable mention guys might have been third team, but they had one guy returning from last year's unit that was honorable mention. That's center Ben Coleman. But you look at the numbers last year, Josh Atkins played a lot at left tackle last year. Second year as a starter, gave up 25 pressures, 2 sacks, not great. Max, I'm going to pronounce his last name, 21 pressures, 3 sacks. Those are guys who are going into their sort of third years as starters or heavy rotation players, and I expect them to continue to make improvement. I like their inside. I think Ben Coleman's a really good center with over 2,000 career snaps. He was a really good player last year, didn't allow a single sack, only allowed 10 pressures in 14 games that they played last season. Also a guy, they also then got a transfer in from Jamito Egbigbo from Texas State, who has over 2,500 career snaps at Texas State. There's questions I have about how, there's obviously questions about the jump from P5 to this level. But he's a big old kid. He's played a ton of football, and he was very good the last couple of years for them. So I think that's your question mark, is a guy that played 2,500 snaps, I think you'll be okay. The other thing I like about this line, guys, is they're big. They're not real tall and long, but they're massive. Their smallest guys, their left tackle, who's 6'4", 315. The rest of their line is 330, 330, 330, and 325, which fits their style. And they're going to have talent around them. So I really like this Arizona State offensive line. And I'm assuming, Trev, the reason you don't have them on there, we'll get into this. There were 4 or 5 groups right on the edge that are very similar. You got to take some leaps. And the reason I went with them is because it's easier to project them because of the experience and the fact that they proved it last year. And it's kind of the opposite of Trev's talking about the Illinois offensive line. I actually like the talent of the Illinois offensive line a little better, but they didn't prove it. They didn't play like an elite offensive line. Arizona State did. And they lost their best player, but I like this group coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those groups at the end of the day that I might end up kicking myself for not putting them on there.
Yeah.
When I look at everything all considered, but I know we'll get into it a little bit later.
You're up next.
I think it's you. I think it's your.
It is me. Speaking of the Illinois Fighting Illini, bing. So Illinois is an interesting unit, Trev, because these are two of the most experienced units that we're going to talk about here. You talk about their all 5 starters come back. Now, Brandon Henderson was not like he only played 407 snaps last year, started multiple games, but I do think he missed a couple games and was part of a little bit of a rotation. But their left tackle, J.C. Davis, 2,357 snaps. Josh Geske, left guard, he has 1,351 snaps. Josh Kreutz, the center, has over 1,700 snaps. Melvin Priestley, the right tackle, has over 2,100 snaps. Davis was a third-team honorable all Big Ten player last year. And then Geske, Kreutz, and Priestley were all honorable mention Big Ten players last year. There's a lot of size. They're 6'5", 320, 6'5", 325, 6'2", 290, 6'5", 335, and then 6'4", 315 across the board. They were solid in pass pro last year. The thing that I want to see from this unit, and the reason I have them where I have them and is exactly what Trevor said. It's the production wasn't great, but I expect it to be better because they didn't produce like a top 10 offensive line. So we are saying, well, you guys are supposed to project. We are. We're projecting them into the top 10, which is where the projection comes from. But it's hard for me to have them where they were into the top 5 without having seen them do it. So I'll have some comments on like Iowa, for example, but with Illinois, when I did my stats breakdown, they were 17th of the 19 teams in rushing last year. And they were, I think, 14th in 15th in yards per carry last year. And that's just got to get better, Trev. But I like how this unit performed. I think they're physical. I think they're big. And I do think they're going to get better. And that's why I have Illinois as I think that experience playing together is going to benefit them. Because I think a couple of the guys they had are going into their second years at Illinois. Not all of them have. I'm going to look that up while we're talking. But I believe that there's at least one or two of their starters that started for them last year that were guys that transferred from other schools prior to last year, I believe. I know that Geske I know that Kreutz has been there for a minute, but I'm just checking that real quick. But yes, so Melvin Priestley transferred from Grambling, and J.C. Davis, their tackle, transferred from New Mexico. And so they were both first-year guys at Illinois last year. So I think there was some learning to play together going on last season that now that they all have, I think that's going to be a factor that really helps them take that jump this year.
Oh, absolutely. And another factor about Illinois, to your point, Brian, Brandon Henderson, he took over as a starter after week 5.
Okay. So it's later in the year. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And so that's kind of when they started to get back on track. But I'm with you with Illinois. Yeah. Definitely with you there.
They have a shot to raise. They're like, we should even do this. We should even say this to all these teams is like, this team could ascend or maybe go down. I think Illinois is a team that could ascend.
Yep.
As we get through the season, if they can be what we think they're going to be.
Yep, absolutely. My next team, my number 8 team is the Florida Gators. And I know there's been some conversation about them being ranked higher in a lot of other people's lists. I have them at 8. Now, this is the first offensive line that kind of has a little bit of a snippet of star power to it in their center, Jake Slaughter. I mean, he might be the best center in the country by a lot of people's accounts, mine included. He was a preseason first-team All-American by PFF, Athlon Sports, Walter Camp. He was Lindy Sports' #1 center in college football, and he was a big reason for the Florida Gators turnaround from 2023 to 2024. In 23, Florida's offensive line allowed 39 sacks, and they cut that number almost in half to 20 in 2024, and he was a big reason for that. Last season, in 402 pass blocking snaps, he allowed 1 sack, 0 hits on the quarterback, 9 total pressures. Jake Slaughter had a really good season for them last year. Where some of the questions start to come in, they are replacing a right tackle. Bryce Lovett is stepping into the starting lineup. Now, he played in 13 games for them last season, racked up 359 snaps. He has 3 career starts, but he's stepping into the starting lineup. But everybody else coming back has experience. Austin Barber, He has 27 career starts. I'm going to butcher this name, but I think it's Kingia Harris. He has 14 career starts. Across the board, this group has 89 career starts, and they played a combined 2,968 snaps together last season. And the makings of this offensive line physically are what you think of when you think of an SEC offensive line. I mean, Austin Barber, 6'6", 322. Damian George, their right guard, is 6'6", 362. It's a big dude. Yeah. I mean, on the right side of the offensive line, their smaller guy is 6'5", 326. It's because their right guard is 6'6", 322. So it's a big physical group. They don't sacrifice a ton athletically. Sometimes you think that they would because of their height and weight. I don't think they're Notre Dame caliber athletic along the offensive line because they are big, bruising type. But the performance of this offensive line last year was one of the reasons Florida was able to make it out of that gauntlet of a schedule at 8-5 at the end of the season when everything was all said and done, because there was a lot of people when they started off the season the way they did against Miami and they looked what was coming down the barrel. There was questions if this team was going to get to 4 or 5 wins. And the performance of the offensive line definitely helped turn it around a little bit. Numbers don't blow you away. They were 67th in rushing yards per game, 56 in yard per carry. But that jump from sacks allowed, from allowing 39 sacks in 23 to 2024, again, this is a show where we're projecting if they can stay on that line. I'm not saying that this year they're going to allow 10, but in the trend of cutting it in half. But if they're able to continue improving with a quarterback like DJ Lagway, this group is in my top 10 for sure. The 7th team on my list is Miami. And this is obviously an opponent that Notre Dame fans are going to be familiar with. They square off with them in the season opener. But this is a really good offensive line. You go through and you break down what they have coming back. 86 career starts. They played 3,806 snaps last year, and they return experience across the board. Another big offensive line in some spots. I mean, their left tackle, Markel Bell, is just, he's a buzz cut under 6'10". I mean, he's a tall dude. I mean, he's 6'9". He is 340 pounds. Their right guard, Inez Cooper, he's 6'6", 350. And then Francis Maui Noah, which we learned from when we previewed them how to say his last name properly. Francis Maui Noah, he has 26 career starts. Inez Cooper has 31 career starts. They're holding down the right side of their offensive line. They combined to play over 1,700 snaps last season alone. Francis Maui Noah, he's a Walter Camp and Athlon's first-team preseason All-American. They got a transfer center in from TCU, James Brockermeyer. He was a former All-Big 12 player. Francis Maui Noah is the number 4 offensive tackle in college football, according to Lindy Sports. And then Inez Cooper was on Phil Steele's 4th-team preseason All-American. Now, this unit, where it honestly surprised me was their efficiency numbers when it came to rushing yards. You go through and you look at what they did last season. They were number 6 in the country in yards per carry, averaged 5.67 yards per carry last year. They were number 31 in the country in rushing yards per game. Where I was kind of surprised is I thought, based on what their passing offense was last year, I thought their sacks allowed number was going to be a little bit lower than what it was. They were 57th in the country last year. Some of that was, we know obviously Cam Ward's tendencies. It's what made him so great, but to extend some plays from time to time, that also played a factor in it as well. But I think they're going to make a jump. This is going to be year 2 of most of these guys starting together. Obviously, James Brockermeyer is coming in as the new guy, but he started all 12 games last year for TCU, sat out the bowl game when he transferred to Miami. But they are my number 7 offensive line on my list.
All right. Let's go to my number 7, Trev, and it's the Alabama Crimson Tide. I'm not quite as high on Alabama as some others are because I have a few more questions about Alabama than some others do. And number 1 is they don't have anybody to me that's a star. And I think Parker Brailsford gets a lot of hype because he was part of the Joe Moore Award-winning Washington unit. And he's a good football player, but I don't think he's a dominant player. He just does his job at a high level. A lot of people are projecting Caden Proctor to being that dominant player, and he could be. I need to see it. And that's true for a lot of people, but I don't have the same level of faith overall that he's going to be there. They also have to replace their right tackle. Wilkin Formby steps into that. He did play 305 snaps last year. Gino Vandemark started a chunk of last season. He kind of rotated in and out. They moved on from Elijah Pritchett. I think that was wise. I think he was probably the one weak spot in their line, and Nebraska's hoping that he can go there and improve and be a better player. But I like this Alabama line. I do. I still wonder, is it fit for what Kalen DeBoer wants to do? It was built like a big physical run-blocking Alabama offensive line, and they just didn't allow it to be that last year. Do they adapt that at all? I don't know. Are they going to be great in pass pro? I don't know. And that's going to be a question mark for me. I think that Caden Proctor showed me progress last year. He's the key. If he ends up having that third-year jump, which he very well could have, then I could see Bama skyrocketing up this list. But they also need Wilcom Formby, who also was a former top recruit, to grow up really quickly. Because in the SEC, if you're a question mark at tackle, that's when you can get in some problems. So I like this Bama line. There's just a little bit more show me to it, where some other teams that have to show me, I have a lot more confidence in. But I think this is also where getting Ryan Grubbs back this season is going to be big. Not that he's going to be coaching the offensive line, but I do think he has a good effect on Kalen DeBoer. And the way that offense goes, I think that you're going to see an offensive line that plays more sound, plays together more. But you've also got to show me, like, you weren't a top 5 to 7 offensive line last year, and you also had Tyler Booker. Now you've got to replace him. Is Geno Vandermark going to be able to replace him? Is Jaden Roberts going to be able to develop his game and grow and improve a little bit? But they're like a lot of others. They're big. Outside of center, they're big. 6'7", 366, 6'5", 326, 6'5", 327, and 6'7", 324. How well this group develops as pass rushers is going to be key. I thought they were solid in pass pro last year. They got to get a little bit better, but Jalen Milroe also bailed them out of some mistakes last season as a runner. But how's their run blocking going to be? I think Bama needs to get back to being more consistent. This is a line that I look and say, if I'm wrong, I'm going to be wrong because I was too low. I don't think I'm going to be wrong because they get worse and don't play like a top 10 unit. If I miss on Bama at the end of the year, it's going to be because the questions that I have get answered positively, and this become not just from an O-line standpoint, but how they're utilized. You can have a talented offensive line, but if the play calling in the system isn't designed to fit their skills, then they're not going to play like their talent should would otherwise reflect. That's also part of my issue with this Bama line. If all those questions gets answered, then I think if I'm wrong, it's going to be because Bama moves up and they're a top 5 offensive line. But this is one of the reasons that I'm a lot higher on Bama this year, because I do project them to have a top 10 offensive. They didn't last year, guys. They did not have a top 10 offensive line last year. I don't care what any Joe Moore award, this or that. They did not have a top 10 offensive line this year. The fact that I think they're going to have one this year is one of the several reasons why I'm a lot higher on Bama this year than I was on Bama last year. Number 6, the Miami Hurricanes. Miami's one that I went back and forth, and even as we're talking about it, I'm feeling like, man, I feel like I should put Bama ahead of Miami. But Miami, I just think, has more potential. And I like some of the depth that Miami has. But when I look at this Miami offensive line, I do have some things I really like about it. Francis Malinois at right tackle is a very good player, second-team All-ACC last year as a true sophomore. I think he goes into his third year as a starter, and he really takes off. I think all the preseason first and second-team All-American stuff for him is pure projection. He didn't play like an All-American last year, but he played like a true sophomore who's on the verge of becoming an All-American. And that's why I project him. If I was doing like first and second team All-American lists, which we're going to do later this offseason, he'll be on it. I think he's an outstanding football player. I think he's going to take another jump under Alex Mirabel, who's a very good offensive line coach. Inez Cooper's another guy that is an intriguing player. He was an honorable mention All-ACC player last year. And he was good at times, and I thought he struggled at times. He's a very inconsistent player, in my opinion. And pass pro was an issue for him last season. He gave up 7 sacks plus hits on the quarterback. It's got to improve. They were against the teams you'd think it was against. He really struggled against Louisville, who had a really good defensive line. He struggled against Syracuse last season. Struggled against Cal last season. Had some issues against Virginia Tech last season. He's a guy that's played a lot of football. He's going into his third year as a starter, and I'm projecting him to improve. But he's a guy that has to play to his potential on a more consistent basis. Having him as a fourth-team All-American is 100% about projection. But I get it because he's big, he's physical, and there's flashes on film where you're like, this kid's a really good football player. And the ACC coaches thought enough of him last year to make him an honorable mention All-ACC player. So I like him. Markel Bell's a big James Brock. Let's just go here. James Brockermeyer's steady as a center. It's nothing special, just steady. I think they need that present. Left guard's going to be interesting. Ryan Rodriguez was expected to be the starting left guard last year. He got hurt in, I think, the second or third game of the year. Out for the year. Matthew McCoy replaced him. They're both back. So there's going to be a little bit of a battle left guard. They'll be solid there no matter who starts. And then the big key for why Miami could be here, they are here because of center to right tackle and then projecting left tackle. Markel Bell's a talented player. He gave up 18 pressures last year and 3 sacks and he was only a part-time tackle. 544 snaps is I think all he played last year. Came over from JUCO, rotated with Jalen Rivers, and was in my opinion, just way too inconsistent for me to feel great about left tackle this year. I know he's 6'9" and he's big and he's strong and he's a pretty athletic kid for his size, but he's also a guy that had some struggles last year. And if he can't get better, then he's going to continue to struggle. Again, another guy that struggled against Louisville last year, or Virginia Tech, last year. Had some issues against, early in the season. Got better. He gave up 12 pressures in the first 6 games, only gave up 6 in the last 6 games, but then got worked by Syracuse in a game where they blew a lead and didn't play well in that game. So getting Markel Bell to be more consistent is going to be a big part of it. But part of the reason he also gave up fewer sacks in the second half of the year is because he wasn't playing as much, because that's when they started rotating him more with Jalen Rivers because he was having some early season struggles. So him taking that year 2 jump, going from JUCO to year 1, now year 2, is why I have Miami here. If him and Arnez Cooper both step up this year, Miami can rise. But they're also a team, Trevor, where if those guys don't produce, they could go lower on this list also. They're the one team that has the most range. They could be a top 3 offensive line. They could be barely top 10. It all depends, in my opinion, on what kind of growth Arnez Cooper and Markel Bell make this season. But I kind of went in the middle. That's why I went 6. Like I literally looked at it and said, okay, I could see them being here. If all this works out, I could see them being here. So where's the happy medium? It's 6.
Yeah, I get that completely. I'm with you. My number, I guess what would that be? My number 6 then, correct, is the Utah Utes. And now look, I am big on the Utah turnaround this year. I think there's going to be some things working out in their favor, offensive line being one of them. Another one is they're done messing around with the whole Cam Rising situation. Different conversation for a different day. But I think that Utah's offensive line is what's going to start to bolster this turnaround for them. I go and I look at what they bring back. 83 career starts, 3,369 snaps last season. Their offensive line is going to be held down by 2 people. Their center, Jaron Kump, 28 career starts, 773 snaps last season. And then right tackle Spencer Fano, or Fano. I might be pronouncing that wrong. But he has 24 career starts, 770 snaps in 2024. Spencer is getting a lot of attention this offseason. A lot of attention. He was a Walter Camp, Lindy's PFF, Athlon Phil Steele, first-team preseason All-American. Lindy's ranked him as the number 2 offensive tackle in college football. For him, he's going to have to play up to that level. Again, all these preseason lists, it's a lot of projection. Last season, it was a pretty good year for him. It's why he earned a lot of preseason accolades. He's going to have to take that to the next level if he wants to kind of lead the charge of this turnaround for Utah's offensive line. I like Jaron Kump. My one concern with him is the consistency at the level where he plays. And when I mean where he plays, I don't mean like his level of performance. I mean where along the offensive line. He has started games at every position on the offensive line in college. Every single one. He started at left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. And you see it. I mean, his body type, he's 6'6", 315. Not the typical build that you see from a center at 6'6", considering a lot of the centers that we've talked about today barely get over 6'4", and a lot of them aren't over 300 pounds. Last season, Utah ranked 62nd in sacks allowed, tied with Notre Dame, but played fewer games. They weren't able to run the ball effectively. That is going to be the biggest turnaround for me for Utah when I look at this group. If they're able to run the football effectively, then I believe that my number 6 ranking is going to hold true. I took this more on the higher end of what their projection is. This is my group that has the biggest room to fall. If they're not able to play at a more consistent level and they're not able to run the ball more efficiently, which is going to start up front, this group is going to be a fringe top 10 team. But I like what they bring back. I like Caleb Lumau. He is 12 career starts. I believe they had 2 players last year that kind of step into the starting lineup for the first time in their left tackle and then their left guard. I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name. I'm going to mess it up. But left guard's first name is Tanoa. And he also has 12 career starts, 649 snaps played last year. If this unit can stay healthy and play as a more consistent unit, then I really like their chances to turn around and be that dark horse in the Big 12 that I think that they can be. But like I said, this group is my biggest room to fall, depending on if they're able to turn around their run game efficiency. That's for sure. Go ahead, Brian. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, just real quick. So I want to kind of go to my 6 real quick, and then we'll kind of kick off. Or before you go to your 5, I just want to kind of do a little bit of a segment break here because we're going to go to the next 5 next. But before we jump over that, folks, do us a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and then also make sure you're subscribed to the CFB Nation podcast and YouTube channel. So we'll cut up this video into 2, put it onto the CFB Nation channel, but we also will put the podcast. People have said, hey, you're not putting the opponent previews on the podcast. You're not putting them, these breakdowns. We're putting these up on the CFB Nation channel. That is also part of the Irish Breakdown family, Irish Breakdown Network. We just got our YouTube channel monetized over there. So we're going to start doing more stuff over there. So when you look for these podcasts, you won't find them on the IB podcast. You'll only find them on the CFB Nation. So make sure that you are subscribed also to our CFB Nation podcast. And the sporting news guys, we have Bill Trocchi and Bill Bender talked about SEC Media Days today. So that's up on the YouTube channel, and then Vince will get that put up here on the podcast channel here a little bit later. But just want to make sure that before we get to the next segment, we will just reminder that we also have that channel as well. And when we put this up in podcast form, that's where it's going to go. All right. So Vince, you ready to dive into the last 5? Are you taking your notes? You ready to quiz us and ask us those questions, pepper us with the different things?
I'm ready. We just need to just get them out there in the open. And I'm ready to start hammering you guys.
My number 5 is the Iowa Hawkeyes. I actually really like this Iowa team coming back. And when you look at the production from last year, the production was outstanding. Of the teams that I considered in the rankings, Iowa finished 5th last year in yards per rushing yards per game. They finished 5th in rushing yards per carry. They finished 7th among the teams in sacks allowed. I think there was a level of consistency that I really like. I know that they lose their first team all-conference player, but when I look at what they've also got coming back, they got 3 other guys coming back on this offensive line, 2 other guys, in their center, Logan Jones, and their right tackle, Jennings Dunker, who were second-team All-Big Ten players last year. So they got a lot coming back. The Jack Dossler one does give me pause as well, Trev. He does. I like the fact that there's a veteran in Bo Stevens next to him, so it kind of helps him along. But their pass pro numbers last year were excellent. Dunker's the only guy coming back that gave up a sack last year. Logan Jones, we talked about how good Jake Slaughter was. Logan Jones last year, and I think he was, let me pull up his stat numbers, but he gave up only 5 pressures all season and gave up no sacks last year. And he played 600, I'm going to tell you the number of snaps he played, but over the last 2 years, he's played over 1,200 snaps, and he's only given up 2 sacks, and those were both in 2023. He gave up 18 pressures in 2023, dropped that down to 5 last year. So took a big jump. I think he's kind of just a really steady, solid player. The left tackle's a question mark, but guys, I look at it and I'm like, but it's still Kirk Ferentz's team. And I think their O-line coach, George Barnett's really got things rolling. They're in an offensive system now that gives them more balance, better production. And the other thing too, they have a quarterback this year that's really mobile. He's not like a runner, but it's mobile enough to where he can bail them out a little bit. And when you have I've learned this about offensive linemen. when they have a quarterback that can bail them out, they raise their game. It's like they almost like, hey, he helped us out. We got to really take our game to another level. And I think Iowa does that. I'm projecting a little bit here, but guys, they're as steady as can be. And I like their running backs. I think that this group is going to be even better in year 2 of the new offensive system. And I think Iowa's going to get back to looking like Iowa, which is just every year you're putting out top 5 offensive lines. I think they were a top 7, 8 offensive line last year. I like what they got coming back. I got them in the top 5 again.
I like it. My number 5 team is the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I don't want to hammer too much on some of like the individual things because I know, Brian, we talked a lot about Alabama when they appeared on your list. I rank them in my top 5 because, again, we're projecting a little bit to what this season is going to look like. I really think that this group is going to benefit going into year 2 of the Kalen DeBoer era. Noah Grubbs coming back is going to be huge. He's able to reunite with Parker Brailsford. I'm in the same boat as you. I don't think that he's going to be this first team all SEC type of player that some people think that he's going to be. I think that's going to be a little bit
or
of
if he is, it'll be part of just reputation and just steadiness. He's not like a butt kicker. He's not like Jeff Fain. He's not like this dominant elite center. He's just a do your job all the time kind of guy.
Exactly. I also think that they're going to benefit from the change of the style of quarterback. While I do think Jalen Milroe was able to get them out of some bad looks last year, I also think that he put them in a couple of bad looks last year. I think they're going to have a quarterback that's going to have a little bit better command of the offense this season. I think they're going to have a quarterback that's able to switch protections up a little bit better this season, kind of play into what some of the strengths are of this team. But I'm with you. It is going to be relying around how they improve in the run game. I know they have Jam Miller coming back. He's a proven back at that level. I don't know if I'd put him in the category of elite Alabama running backs that they've had, but he's a good quality running back. And so I'm projecting to what I believe this group is going to be at the end of the year, but I really like what they have coming back. You know, they played almost 2,500 snaps together last year, 84 career starts. Caden Proctor is the interesting one for me. I think that he takes the jump this year. I do. Questions around what happens at left guard. Is it going to be Cam Dewberry, the kid that they got from Texas A&M? I know that they're going to be battling going into fall camp. And then Wilkin Formby also is going to have to step up. Played in 9 games last year, 291 snaps, but he's going to have to step into the limelight a little bit. Caden Proctor's getting a lot of he's garnishing a lot of attention this offseason. A lot of projection there. He has all of the physical tools to be that. Again, 6'7", 366 pounds. He's going to have to take that next step as a player, but I really think he's going to benefit going into year 2 under Kalen DeBoer and then Noah Grubbs coming back. So, or is his first name Noah?
Who?
Alabama's offensive coordinator. Ryan Grubbs. Noah Grubbs is their quarterback.
Yeah, is Notre Dame's quarterback. Yeah.
I've
really done that before too.
Yeah, really going to benefit from Ryan Grubbs coming back. And then my number 4 team is Notre Dame. I have them coming in inside of my top 5. I would have had them placed higher on my list if it wasn't for the injury to Charles Jagasaw. Now, I know the biggest question is going to be, well, Trev, in the offensive line show, you said that you believed that their starting lineup wasn't going to change from week 1 to when they made it to the playoffs. I don't think that it will, because I don't think the coaching staff is going to want to switch up what rhythm the offensive line is going to be in. With that being said, I also don't think that their ceiling is going to be as high without Charles Jagasaw on the lineup, because I think he has the highest ceiling in the offensive line room this season. It's going to be a question of rhythm and experience versus what the highest ceiling is. That's going to be the biggest conversation around them. But you look at what they do have coming back. Anthony Knapp had 15 starts last year as a true freshman. He's going into year 2. Like we talked about before, I'm expecting him to make a jump. I'm really high on Billy Schrauth this year. He has 15 career starts, played 700 snaps last season despite being hurt for like 3 to 4 games. Ashton Craig, return around health. The biggest question, again, for this unit is going to be health. How healthy can you stay? Not that that's not a question for the other teams in this list, but I think Notre Dame more so. They suffered a lot of injuries, decimated by injuries last year. But despite that, they were still Joe Moore Award semifinalists. And Emil Wagner, again, he's kind of he is their player that's garnishing a lot of offseason attention. You know, I know a lot of it's gone to Charles Jagasaw, but Emil Wagner, number 8 offensive tackle, according to Lindy's in college football, preseason second-team All-American by Athlon Sports. And their rushing numbers were off the charts last year. Number 7 in yards per carry, number 19 in rushing yards per game. pass protection, especially with the different style of quarterback under center for them, is going to have to take a bump. But I do believe that this is a top 5 unit going into or at the end of this college football season. So that's Notre Dame is my number 4 team.
All right, let's go to my number 4 team, Trev, and I got the Clemson Tigers here, and I think this is a surefire top 5 offensive line. I think the only question with Clemson is where in the top 5 do you put them? And when I look at this team, I see a lot of things. I see experience. They've got 2 guys, the right side of their offensive line. Both of those guys have over 2,800 career snaps. Walker Parks is going into his 6th season. Blake Miller is going into his 4th season. He started as a true freshman at Clemson. They've played a ton of football. You've got Ryan Linthicum coming back at center, who was an honorable mention All-ACC player last year. Blake Miller was a first-team All-ACC player last year. Walker Parks was a third-team All-ACC player. Their left tackle, Tristan Lee, goes in his 2nd. Really, he was off and on as a starter the year before. He became more of a full-time starter last year for Clemson at left tackle. I thought he had a really solid year, steady year, missed a couple games, I think, because of injury. Still played 756 snaps last season. Good player, talented player. Their left guard is gonna be new this season. Harris Sewell is new, but he's played a lot of football. He's played over 900 snaps. He started some last year or last couple of years in injury situations. But when I look at this Clemson offensive line, guys, I think it's got the tools to be a number 1 or number 2. My big thing with Clemson, though, is it's talented and experienced, but it just doesn't dominate the way that you would expect it to dominate on a consistent enough basis. I look at last year, and there were games, fellas, where I'd watch this offensive line, and I'm like, okay, now this is what I expected the Clemson offensive line to look like. And then there's other games where I'm like, what happened to the Clemson offensive line that I expected to see? The big thing for Matt Luke he's got to do this year is he's got to get them to play more consistently, because they're like Miami. They could be up to number 1 or 2, but I could see them falling a little bit. And the 2 areas they've got to show me something. You've got to be more consistent running the football than they were last season. You're talking about, like we talked about Notre Dame's inconsistency running the ball last year. And Notre Dame was inconsistent running the ball last year. They were still 27 yards better than Clemson. And you can't say, well, Notre Dame had a running quarterback. Yeah, so did Clemson. It came down to you just didn't get consistent performances from them in the run game. And then the other reason, guys, is their pressure numbers are not good. They still give up way too many pressures. If you look at their starting offensive line, their starting offensive line gave up 14 sacks last season compared to Alabama's offensive line, who gave up 5. Now, that's a little somewhat misleading because they played more snaps, but not that many more snaps. They've got to do a better job of consistently protecting the quarterback, because some games, guys, they look like they're great protecting the quarterback, and then other games they're not. But it's improved the running game, and in 4 of their last 5 games last year, guys, they were less than 140 yards rushing. They had 58 against Pitt, 139 against South Carolina, 64 against SMU, and 76 against Texas. The only game they were over was 302 against the Citadel. Like, you can't finish the season off running the ball like that against good competition, but not like elite competition, and be a no-brainer top 2-3 offensive line. They got to prove it to me. And the reason that I don't know how much projection I can have with this line, because they're so experienced. How much better are they actually going to get? That's a legitimate question with this line. I do think there is room for them to improve. The biggest guy for me, though, is Tristan Lee at left tackle. He's the one that has to get the most. I don't know how much better Walker Parks is going to get. I don't know how much better Blake Miller's going to get. Tristan Lee, I do think, has room to take a big jump. And if he can take a big jump, that's what raises Clemson up. So I do agree with the other analysts that think Clemson's a top lineup. I just was not impressed with their film last year when you consider how experienced they were. And I wonder how much better can they actually get. But either way, I think they're going to be a top 5 offensive line this year.
For my number 3 team, I believe that's the number that we're on. For my number 3 team, I have the Texas A&M Aggies. Again, I'm very high.
Sorry, this is me.
Oh, no worries.
You also have them, but we're the same on this one. But it was we snaked the wrong way. But just go ahead. You're good.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, my apologies on that, but I do
No, it's my fault. I paused it for you to go, and then, I'm the one controlling the card, so that's on me.
I do have Texas A&M as my number 3 team. 128 career starts. They played 3,629 snaps together last year. They're going to have some of they will have the most talented offensive line, I believe, that Notre Dame is going to face in the regular season. I mean, we're talking about left tackle Trey Zune. He was all SEC in 2024. I'm not as high on Armaj Reed Adams as like what some of the other outlets have him. Like I don't have him as like a first team All-American, but he's a really good football player. Very, very experienced. He has 27 career starts, played 744 snaps for them last year. But him and Trey Zune are going to be holding down this offensive line. I mean, Trey Zune leads the way with 37 career starts. This is a good, really good, talented offensive line. And of course, per the consistent conversation around the SEC, this is a gigantic unit. Trey Zune is, they go 6'7", 320, 6'6", 330, 6'3", 340, 6'5", 340, 6'7", 340 from left to right. They're geared to running the football, which is pretty par for the course considering who they have in their backfield in Le'Veon Moss, Amari Daniels, Reuben Owens coming back from injury, and then a mobile quarterback in Marcel Reed. I'm really high on this unit this year. And this is what's going to be key for them to kind of elevate where they were at in year 1 of the Mike Elko era. Mm-hmm. They finally have their quarterback situation figured out. Their running back room is now back healthy, ready to go. Again, I don't want to, beat the drum too much of, yes, we all know that this is a projection list, but out of all the teams that I put on here, this is my least likely team to fall that much. Like I would be shocked if this Texas A&M offensive line dropped out of honestly, out of the top 5, let alone the top 10.
It's funny, Trevor. I have them right here.
Yeah.
I just don't see them falling, and I don't know how much they're going to raise either.
Mm-hmm.
I just think they are what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And what they are is a pretty good offensive line. You know, when you look at the 19 teams that I evaluated, they were 6th in rushing yards per game, 8th in yards per carry, and 12th in sacks. But some of the sacks, Marcel Reed actually did not help them last year with sacks. I thought he ran into some sacks. I thought Connor Wegman did a poor job handling pressure last season. I just think, like you said, this is a very steady offensive line. Armaj Reed Adams was a first-year guy at there. They had an injury at center. Mark Naboo was supposed to be their starting center. He got hurt, and then they had to get replaced. Now he's back, so there's some uncertainty if he's going to win the job back or not. But I also think Chase Basantis stepping in at left guard is going to help them. I thought he showed flashes of being a stud last year, but I think this is about as floor versus ceiling as being almost the same as any team on this list. So I agree. I don't think they fall, and I just don't know if they're going to be good. The only way that they rise to number 1 is if the other teams around them just play inconsistent football. Agreed. I think it's going to be a very steady. Like when you watch them play, they don't dominate people. They don't like blow people up. Like you'd look at Armaj Reed Adams and think he's like 330 pounds. They're a massive offensive line. Like Zune 6'7", 320. Basantis is 6'6", 330. Fayu is 6'3", 340. Armaj Reed Adams is 6'5", 340. Demetrius Crownover 6'7", 340. You're thinking, man, they just blow people up. No, they don't. They don't really like destroy people. They just do their job. They do their and to your point, at a consistent level to where we even saw it in the second half of the Notre Dame game. They started to lean on Notre Dame's defensive line a little bit, and that was a defensive line with Riley Mills and Jason Onye on it. And to your point, they just do their job at such a consistent level that they do just start to lean on folks towards the end of games. Yeah, they had one game last year of under 130 yards rushing. That was against Texas. That's it. They gained at least 144 yards in every other game. That's a really level of steadiness. Now, is there another level they can get to as run blockers? Yeah, I think so. As you see them play more together, but I think this is a real steady offensive line. I had them 3 as well, Trev, for the reasons that we mentioned, so we can go to your number 2.
My number 2 is Clemson, and I echo a lot of the things that Brian talked about with them. I'm taking a little bit more of the higher end of their projection, and I think it's because of the emergence of Tristan Lay and Harris Sewell at left guard. They are the 2 more inexperienced guys in that lineup. Harris Sewell has only 8 career starts. Tristan Lay has 23 career starts, but his on-the-field performance needs to take a jump. We see Walker Parks and Blake Miller the same. those two alone have 83 combined career starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how much more room there is for them to grow and get better.
Bro, on 3rd and 1, they're running right. I mean,
yeah.
3rd and 1, they're running right. It's just, yeah.
Agreed. Absolutely. Absolutely. And so we're talking about two guys where, Harris Sewell, he played 523 snaps last season. He played in 12 games. He has 8 career starts. And then Tristan Lay, he had 756 snaps last season. If the left side of the offensive line gets shored up, which I believe that they will, I think that Clemson is in a spot where I think they're going to win the ACC. I think they're going to make the playoffs once again, but not as the 12 seed. And I think their offensive line is going to be a big factor in it. They have to find a way to run the football more consistently.
Yep.
Absolutely have to. And I think that they will. I think that in some ways in their offense last year, he was experienced, but I think Phil Maffa limited some of the things that they wanted to do last year on offense because of his style as a running back. And so now that doesn't mean the offensive line doesn't have to get better, because I think they'll have a more athletic talent in the backfield. They will. But if the offensive line gets short up on the left side, I really like the look of this unit. And then again, Ryan Linthicum, I think, just holds it down at the center. He has 14 career starts, and I think he's going to be another one of those players there. He's in between kind of the right guard, right tackle, left guard, left tackle conversation. He has room to grow, not as much as the left side, but I don't think he's reached the ceiling like the right guard and right tackle have. So I have Clemson at my number 2.
My number 2, Trevor, is the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. And honestly, I thought about this, and when it's the team that you cover, you can kind of, this is speaking for myself, you can kind of overreact to a question mark. But as I looked at Notre Dame and I compared them to all the other teams, you got to look at it and say, okay, you've got to compare Notre Dame's floor to Texas A&M's floor, and they're not even close. Like, I think the A&M floor is much higher than the Notre Dame floor because there's more certainty of Texas A&M. You've seen this group of 5 play together before. We've seen it. We haven't seen Notre Dame's group of 5 play together before. When I look at Notre Dame, it's one of those lines that I do think, like a Alabama, like a Miami, that could raise up, that could go down. There's some of this in their ranking. Same with Clemson. The reason I'm going Notre Dame number 2 is because when I look at all the lines that are like that, this was by far the least experienced based on what they did last year. When you look at their how many teams went into the season with as little experience as this unit had, and to see them play the way that they did, to see them even not even play well, but then battle the way they did in the postseason, getting the experience that they got in the postseason. And when you then look at the numbers and you say, of all the teams that we evaluated, that we broke down, Notre Dame ranked third in rushing, 2nd in yards per carry, and they ranked 10th in sacks of these teams. So bottom half of sacks, but top 3 in rushing numbers. That's with the issues they had last year. Now, you can say, well, they had great running backs, and they did. But I just want to remind people, on most of the long touchdown runs that they had last year, those running backs never got touched. When you go to Jeremiah's long touchdown run against Virginia, didn't get touched. His long run against Army, didn't get touched. His long run against Indiana, didn't get touched. Jadarian Price had to make a guy miss on the second level against A&M, but he didn't get touched. I mean, he was able to get through the line, square a guy up, and then make a miss. Now, the running backs did their jobs of, there's times when safeties come down in the hole and they got to make somebody miss. But I think when you look at the production they had last year, and even without Charles Jagasaw, this is going to be a much more talented offensive line. You've got Anthony Knapp going into year 2. Trev, you had a nice article breaking down his improvement in the second half of the year in pass pro. Now, it's still not anywhere close where it needs to be. And yes, Riley Leonard did bail them out of some situations last season, but they did get better as the season went on. Even when they lost battles, they still held their own. And there's plays where Abdul Carter whoops Emil Wagner, but Emil's able to get a body on him to allow Riley to get out of the pocket and get the ball off to Jaden Greathouse in certain situations. That's improvement early in the year. That's probably a sack, or Riley's got to scramble because he's running on a run through. I think Billy Schrouth, when you look at the run game production when he's in the lineup, is significantly better. I think a big key for me is they're going to be way more talented at center this year. And I think they're going to be more talented at right guard. Not as experienced, but more talented. And I look at it as, even with Selvin Absher, who I project as a right guard in the starting lineup, We're talking about an almost 6'8", 328-pound kid who, when he played last year, was pretty good. So like I did with Iowa, I'm projecting a talented player into a situation that I think he's going to perform. When you just look at left tackle, I think is going to be a big jump from last year. Is it going to be elite? We don't know that answer, but I think it's going to be a lot better. I told you guys about my All-American bold prediction in our O-line show the other day. You got to think about where my head is for why I'm ranking them here based on that bold prediction, because I think it's a possible one. And then you look at it and say, okay, also looking at it from standpoint of getting Ashton Craig back. Big jump at center. I think their right tackle gets better. I think their left guard gets a lot better. The thing about it is their four most talented guys that are returning starters from last season were all first-year starters last season. There's more room for jumps with them than some of these other teams that we're looking at who are going into third and fourth years of starters. And when you combine that with natural God-given ability, I just think this offensive line is going to be really good. And even with Sullivan Absher being there, I feel that way. But the other thing is this projection is based on what they're going to be throughout the season. They're going to get Charles Jagasaw back at some point in time. So one of two things is going to happen. Sullivan Absher's playing well enough where Jagasaw doesn't get a spot back. And if that happens, this is an elite offensive line. Or Sullivan Absher and Anthony Knapp are both playing well enough to where Jagasaw doesn't have a place to play. Or two, you insert a 6'7", 330-pound All-American caliber player in the middle of the season at some point in time. Either way, that's going to be good for Notre Dame. And so when I look at it, I see talent. I see a much more experienced unit. You're talking about a team that last year went into the season with 6 career starts combined, and they still ranked third and second in yards and yards per carry amongst the teams we're evaluating for this mark. And I think this is going to be a really good offensive line. I also, as I said, there's a lot more projection here with other lines because when you start projecting fourth-year players to big jumps, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Biggest jumps happen between, in my opinion, year 1 and year 2 as a starter, more often than not. And then you just steadily get better. And that's why I look at this group. I think big jumps are coming. And I think having Sullivan Absher in between 2 veterans is going to help him make a quick progression. But I also think he's going to understand, hey, I've got an opportunity here. How well I play is going to determine whether I'm holding a spot, I'm keeping the seat warm for Jagasaw when he gets back, or am I going to make this decision really hard on the Notre Dame coaches? And I think Sully's going to make that decision really hard. So we're going to find out in the first couple games how good this unit can be. But this is what I think the offensive line should be. They should be one of the 2 best offensive lines of college football. Athleticism, check. Experience now, check. Talent, check. System that fits their skill set, check. I just think all the tools are there for them to be one of the 2 best offensive lines, and I'll explain in a minute why I don't have them number 1, but I think this is where they should be based on all the things I just talked about. Yeah, so we both have same number 1. So Trev, here's the difference between Notre Dame and Penn State. A lot of things I just said about Notre Dame are also true at Penn State. Mm-hmm. Talent, bring a lot of guys back. But I just said Notre Dame was number 3 amongst teams in rushing yards. Penn State was second. I said Notre Dame was second in yards per carry amongst teams that we evaluated. Penn State was 4th. Penn State was 5th in pass pro. A big part of this is Penn State is a more proven offensive line than Notre Dame's is. A lot more experience. Drew Shelton's got 1,700 career snaps compared to 843 for Anthony Knapp. Ione, their left guard's got 695 career snaps compared to Billy Strauss, 957. Nick Dawkins at center has 1,191 career snaps compared to 397 for Ashton Craig. So, and then right tackle, their 2 tackles combined for over 1,100 snaps last year between they combined for over 1,100 career snaps. Nolan Root, Anthony Donka started the year at right tackle. He got hurt. Don't know where he's going to be. Nolan Rucci started in his place. If Nolan Rucci keeps the job, he'll be fine. If Anthony Donka takes the job back, he'll be even better. And so it's really that experience factor and the proven pass protection ability is why Penn State gets number one. I think Notre Dame's going to be better at pass pro this year. Penn State's already shown that growth. They've already shown that they can be pretty – and they don't have a quarterback. So the fact that Notre Dame last year ranked 46th nationally in sacks allowed per game and Penn State ranked 23rd, where their quarterback's more of a sitting duck than Notre Dame's quarterback was, I think shows that they are significantly better in pass pro than Notre Dame. That's the big question about Notre Dame. We know they're going to run the ball. The only reason that Notre Dame's not ahead is because I think there's a big gap. I think Notre Dame's a better running team than Penn State. Penn State just ran it more last season. They averaged 1.4 more yards per game than Notre Dame. They averaged 0.4 fewer yards per carry than Notre Dame's. The difference is that's still close. There's a big difference in pass pro. And that's why Penn State's my number one compared to Notre Dame's. It's just higher floor and more proven in pass protection. There's just this is the one team that I will be shocked if they're not a top 2 to 3 offensive line. They may not be one because somebody else takes a big jump, but I don't see any scenario where they fall out of the top 3. And if they fall below this spot, it's simply because Notre Dame or Clemson or Bama or Miami, somebody just has a major breakout season of the offensive line. It won't be because Penn State's line regresses, in my opinion.
I echo a lot of the same points that you have about Penn State. It's their ability to do both. And yes, I know once we start digging into the numbers of, who has better rushing efficiency stats versus overall numbers, things like that, I get it. To some degree, you're splitting hairs between teams. But it's Penn State's ability to do both. It checks that box for me. Be a really efficient pass blocking team as well. To your point, Brian, with a quarterback back there that is nowhere near as close to the athleticism and the runner that what Riley Leonard was last year, or per the other teams in my list. Drew Aller's also not the runner that Cade Klubnik is. He's not the runner that Marcel Reed is. He wasn't the runner that Riley Leonard was last year. And so that's what set them apart for me and putting them in my number one spot as well. Outside of that, you and I are both on the same page when it comes to Penn State.
All right, boys. Well, that is your top 10 lists. Both of you have unveiled your top 10 lists. And obviously, as we have gone through, there are a lot of similarities, but there are also some differences. And I say similarities in that you guys have the same teams on the list and maybe in some different slots. But there are a couple that like Trevor had a couple on his list that Brian didn't have. Brian had a couple on his list that Trevor didn't have. So I want to ask you guys about those. And kind of at the same time, because I have a feeling it's kind of like one question, but like also your sleepers who maybe didn't make the top 10, maybe they're like 11, 12, 13, like in that neighborhood. Yeah. And so just to clarify for everybody, because we could only get 5 here at a time, there were 2 teams. So Trevor didn't have Ohio State and Arizona State on his list, and Brian didn't have Utah and Florida on his list. And so for both of you, would they have made kind of your honorable mention, or are there some sleeper teams that you think could jump into the top 10? Like all of those kinds of things. I want you guys to kind of talk about that a little bit right here.
Utah's my 11, Florida's my 12. Okay. I mean, they're right next. Yeah. Right and here's what it came down to for me. Everything you said about the talent at Utah, Trev, I agree with. Their 2 starting tackles might be the best tackle tandem of all the teams that we talked about. My issue with Utah is more of what's inside. And the other part of it is like at some point in time, I've used this before, Vince, with you. It's like that scene from Moneyball where at the beginning when they're having their first evaluation of guys they want to go get after they lose Giambi and Damon. And he's like, is he a good hitter? And they start, he goes, then why doesn't he hit good? And it's like, okay, Utah has this great offensive line, and Caleb Lomu was a great player, and Spencer Fanu was a first-team All-Mountain West player last year, and all these kind of things. And it's like, well, then why did they stink? And you talk about they averaged 130.4 rushing yards per game last year. That's second to last. They were dead last in yards per carry last year at 3.9, and they ranked 64th last year in sacks. Which, if you look at the teams that we looked about, would have ranked them 16th in sacks per game. So it's kind of like the jump from being what they were production-wise to a top 10 offensive line just takes a bigger leap than I was willing to make. And that's one that I look back and say, might regret that one, because I do think Utah has a bounce back year. But I mean, if they make just a 30-yard improvement, they're only rushing, which is a big jump. That's still only rushing for 160 yards a game. If they add a whole point to their yards per carry total, they're only averaging 4.9. It's solid. It's good. So I just need to see it with Utah first. And I feel that way about Florida as well. There's a lot of things about Florida that I like, and the potential's there. There's talent there. I'm listening to Trevor like, yep, agree with that. My issue is I think Jake Slaughter is a lot more like Parker Brailsford than he is like a Jeff Fain, where he's just good and does his job. He's not a dominant player. And the issue for that is if your guys around him don't dominate, then it's harder for him to like take over a game the way that like an elite center can take over a game, like physical talent. But of the teams we evaluated, they ranked 12th in rushing last year. They ranked 11th in yards per carry and 9th per sacks. And they also had a quarterback that this had some escapability. I think and they didn't throw the ball a ton last year either. So I with Florida, I do like the talent. They've got experience coming back. There's a lot of things about it, guys, but I just couldn't pull the trigger on them because I still think there's a lot of, I need to see it with them. I need to see them show that they can be those kind of big players. I love Jake Slaughter at center, and I really like Austin Barber at left tackle. It's the other three spots that are questions for me. I just need to see Najee Harris make that jump. I need to see Damian George be a full-time player. He's massive, but he also only played 412 snaps last year. And I need to see how Bryce Levitt handles being a full-time guy. So Florida was right there for me. It just, I couldn't quite project them enough to feel comfortable to put them in there when I've got teams like Ohio State who just has they were just better, and their interior comes back. You've got Arizona State who returns 4 starters and was just better than Florida last year. You've got Illinois that returns all 5 starters. And as much as we question, Trev and I questioned the production from Illinois last year, they were still, better than Florida in a couple categories. You know what I mean? And so I just think that they're going to be able to make a bigger jump. So Florida's one that I look at. Utah's one I look at that I just couldn't put them in there. But I think that speaks to the depth of the good offensive lines this year, more so than it's like Trev and I have this huge disagreement on them. We don't disagree on Florida by a ton. You have them 8. I had them 11. And then you had Utah. Utah's the one we were very different on, 6 and 12. But I'm not listening to you talk, Trev, be like, dude is way off on that one. I get where you're coming from. I just feel like the interior of the offensive line is a major question mark for me. Not just on who's going to play, but also, are they even going to be good? And as good as the tackles are, as a former quarterback, we both played quarterback. If your middle stinks, your line's not going to be good. But if I'm wrong on them, then that's how Utah has their big bounce back and is a Big 12 title contender. They need their line to be a top 5 to 7 unit. It's capable of it. That's a big jump from where they are to where they need to be. That's why I had them 12 and behind Florida.
Yeah, I share really similar thoughts when it comes to Ohio State and Arizona State. I'll start with Arizona State because that is my group that I think that I might regret not putting inside of my top 10. But since we're projecting this out to the end of the season, some of my thought process is, have we just kind of seen the best of what Arizona State's offensive line is? And it's more so other teams surpassing. It's not that Arizona State's offensive line takes a step back, but it's, per my rankings, it's teams like Utah making that jump. You know what I mean? It's teams like Florida making that jump to where Arizona State's still going to have a really good offensive line this year. But did we see the best of what they're going to be this year after losing their all Big 12 offensive linemen as well? So that was kind of my question.
Whereas Utah's best offensive linemen, 2 best offensive linemen are both coming back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the battle that I weighed with them. They were if I had like a 10A, 10B, Arizona State's kind of like my 10B, you know what I mean? Because they had all of the tools to be like, if this was a preseason list, not projecting to what the end of the year is, they would have been in my top 10 because of what they returned and because of how they did last year.
I think both of our lists would have looked very different if we were just doing, like, I don't have Notre Dame number 2 on a preseason top 10 list.
Yeah.
they've got to show me a lot more than A&M does, and some of these other lines do. 100% agree.
And then with Ohio State, it's the combination of you're replacing both tackles. The common theme on my list is there's no team on my top 10 that have to replace both offensive tackles. You combine that with a younger, inexperienced quarterback. I love the middle of their offensive line. I do. But I watched a year where Notre Dame was also having 2 new offensive tackles struggle, and they had a mobile quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying Julian Sayin is an office chair on carpet, but he's not Riley Leonard.
Right. He's a very mobile guy, but he's not right. Yes. Just from an experience standpoint, even if you could say, okay, he's every bit the athlete that Riley Leonard is. Okay, cool. He doesn't have 2 years of starting experience of learning that. Correct.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
And so that's kind of what held them out of mine. Now, if to Brian's point, I have no issue with Ohio State being in anybody's top 10 because I get it. The interior of their offensive line is very stout. And I know that his name is escaping me, but it's somebody who might potentially start at right tackle.
Austin Sarabeld, who started some games at guard last year. Yeah.
If he steps into the lineup at right tackle and like he becomes that solidified guy, I'm gonna feel a lot better about it than where I'm at now. The transfer coming in from Rice, I have questions about the ability to make that jump from.
I'm not super high on him, to be honest with you.
The level at Rice to playing at Ohio State in the Big Ten, the team that now just has the big old target paint.
And he was good last year, but he wasn't good the 2 years before that. At Rice. That's if you're that kind of dude, you should never struggle at Rice.
Exactly. He needed time to kind of get his feet under him at Rice.
Right. And he's massive.
Yes. Big old dude. But now you're expected to protect the blind side of Julian Sayin at Ohio State. And it's just a different level. So that's what held them out of the top 10 for me, is having to replace both tackles. But again, because their interior is so experienced and played at such a high level last season, that's what made it hard to keep them out.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I was at with Ohio State.
That's fair. I think we have the same questions with them. It's just, where do you rank them? My only pushback would be, I do think Arizona State still has room to make another jump because they were kind of all going into their first year together.
Sure.
That's where I came from. But there's not a huge differences between those teams. I think you and I see Utah very differently, but it's not like I have them outside my top 20 and you have them at 6. I have them at 12.
We see them differently, but just different ends of the spectrum, not we're off the reservation on it.
It's who's more comfortable projecting with them.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to, which is totally fair. Vince, you asked earlier about sleeper teams. A couple that I really like. Boise State, to me, is a very interesting one. They have Mason Randolph coming back. He missed a lot of last year. I really like him, how well he settles in. Roger Carrion's a guy that's going to step into a more full-time role this year. They do bring their right tackle back. He's got to get a lot better, though. But it was hard for me to leave Boise State off of here because of how good they were last year. But losing both guards hurts a little bit. They might have the best offensive tackle of anybody we talked about today in Cage Casey. He's outstanding, but it's really going to come down to how does their interior step up? Mason Randolph's got to stay healthy. It's not a given he can, and their 2 guards got to step up. I just have always felt like I can protect the tackle to a degree in a modern offense. Back in the old school under center, if your tackle stunk, you were screwed. In a modern offense where you can, do different things protection-wise, movement-wise, chip, all that type of stuff, I can be okay with a struggling tackle room. It's hard to win when you're not good up the middle, and that's my issue with them. But they could be a team that's up there. I like SMU's starting offensive line coming back. They were right in the conversation for me. Here's Wisconsin's a team that I got my eye on this year. They bring back their center and both tackles. Riley Mahlman's a potential breakout player for me. I saw him at Notre Dame's Irish Invasion a few years ago, and he was like 6'7", 240 pounds, but he was really athletic, and he's now up to 6'8", 320. I think he could be a breakout player for them. Joe Bruner was there. Their guards are a question mark for me. They brought a guy in at left guard from Central Michigan who gave up 27 pressures last year. It's a little concerning for me. That kind of held them back. But if those guards can settle, guys, this Wisconsin offensive line could be really good. And then Iowa State has a good offensive line coming back. But here's one to keep an eye on, Baylor. Baylor's got 4 starters coming back, and the one guy who's not listed as a returning starter, Caden Siraki, has 930 career snaps. But he was hurt last year. Only played 280 snaps last year. He was a starter 2 years ago. So they have 5 guys coming back with starting experience. By the end of the year last year, I thought that Baylor offense was starting to kind of really show me some things last season. And Baylor started off the year 2-4, had a loss to Utah, Colorado, BYU, Iowa State. They finished the year 6-1, and their only loss was a game to LSU where they had 507 yards of offense. Like in their last first 6 games, they had 442, 223, 478, 314, 387, and 337 in total offense. In their last 7 games, they went for 529, 565, 499, 512, 325 in a win in a bad conditions, 603 and 507. And they returned 5 guys with starting experience from that offensive line. Baylor's a team that we could look back at the end of the year and be like, how did you not have Baylor in your top 10? That's the one I probably, and I still have them 13 right now, just because is it system driven? That's the question I have. And is it league driven? And can they take that jump for a whole year? They're a team that I look back and say, I have a feeling I'm going to regret not having them in my top 10.
Couple of the ones that I have in there as sleeper teams. At the top of my list is Indiana. Their offensive line really intrigues me. You know, I go and I look at who they bring back. Carter Smith returns as their left tackle. Bray Lynch returns as their right guard. And then I do like the Pat Coogan pickup out of the portal. Yeah. I mean, that is the level where I think Pat Coogan can thrive at. But he also brings a lot of experience to the table. I mean, IU's going into a season where they have 3 starting offensive linemen that played against Ohio State. You know, they went up against Notre Dame. Like 2 of their starting offensive linemen went up against Notre Dame in a playoff game. And then Pat Coogan is obviously very familiar with the Notre Dame defensive line. And then their right tackle that they brought in, Zen Mikulski, he's a transfer from Ohio State. And so they're moving away from like they're just kind of getting that group of 5 all-star team. And now they're attracting what former Power 4 level talents were to varying degrees. They're one that I'm going to keep my eye on. I don't know if they're going to play at a level that's going to take them into the top 10. I don't think we're going to have to wait that long to find out because they play Oregon and Penn State in the same season. So we're going to see if that kind of comes to fruition. But I'll say this about Indiana's offensive line. Notre Dame handled them in the playoff game, and Ohio State had their way with them in Columbus. But when I go back and I watch those games, their offensive line wasn't getting decimated.
They battled.
There were certain plays where, like, look, I don't know what you want that right tackle to do against Bryce Young. Right. You know, like there's just
they got out-athleted, Trev. That's what when they had trouble, they got out-athleted. And the reality is most teams didn't have Jack Sawyer, JTT, Bryce Young. Yeah. Right.
So they're another team that I'm keeping my eye out on.
Who's really athletic. Exactly.
Oh, yeah. 100%. And then again, with the interior guys, it's like not a lot of other teams have a Riley Mills and a Gabe Rubio and a Tyleek Williams and so I'll be keeping my eye on them as well. And then I know neither of us had them in our top 10 because there's just so much. Look, I'm down to project, and I'm down to project quite a bit. I'm not that ready yet to project like that onto Texas.
Oh, dude,
I'm not ready yet.
I don't see how people have Texas in the top 10. Like, let's end with this because I don't get it. Like, I think do you have the Lindy's and either of you guys have the Lindy's in front of you? I'm going to check Athlon. But when I saw the preseason rankings Lindy's for the offensive lines, and I go to offensive line and they got Texas number 8, I'm like, well, that's kind of high.
Yeah.
And was it Pro Football Focus that had I think PFF had him in like the top lines as well. And
PFF had him in like the top 5, I think. And
they were they had Utah too. They had Texas. Actually, I don't see Texas on here, but
they were on there somewhere because the opening sentence of the Texas segment
was the offenses. That was for the top 10 offenses. But like, where does Lindy's have Texas?
Lindy's doesn't have Texas ranked.
I saw ESPN had talked about how their offensive line is strong. I don't get that. They weren't even a top 10 offensive line last year, and they lost to everybody. Like, when you look at the teams we evaluated, there's 19 teams. Texas last year ranked, 14th in rushing yards per game, 16th in yards per carry, and 16th in sacks allowed. That's just of these 19 teams we evaluated. and how people are projecting that to be a top offensive line. Like, you want to know my biggest question mark for Texas? Sean and I talked about this on Monday, or was it you and I that talked about this, Joe? I think it was me and Sean that talked about this. We went through the top question marks. That is by far the biggest question mark for Texas.
Yeah.
And why I struggled to say that I think that they have a shot to win the title, because their offensive lines show me a lot. And I know some of the guys that they had played last year. Trevor Goolsby played last year. It's not like these guys got, 27 combined starts. They have more than like the 6 Notre Dame had last year. Trevor Goolsby played 3, and this is the snaps played for their projected starting lineup. 328, career snaps, 166, 65. And then Cole Hudson has 1,300 career snaps. But if I remember correctly, looking at his numbers of his 13, let me actually just look this up, because I don't want to say this and then be wrong. But let me just pull up Cole Hudson's career snaps here real quick. Yes, let's see here. Of his 1,300, and I was right. Of his 1,314 career snaps, a grand total of 0 of them are at center, which is the position he's playing this year. Brandon Baker at right tackle has 65 career snaps. And their right guard, DJ Campbell, is the only full-year returning starter, and he was their worst offensive lineman last year, in my opinion. I just don't get the Texas love. I don't get it. Like, to your point, Jeff, that's a ton of projection you got to make.
Yeah.
Like a ton of you got to do someone that walks around saying, hey, man, like, this is how you embrace. Like, hey, buddy. You got to have that level of projection to be able to me put them in the top 10.
Yep.
That is a wild take for me. I don't even have in my top 15. Like, I put them on there because I took all the teams that other people were talking about. They're not in my top 15. The team that I could see that I didn't really strongly consider now, another team, Trevor, I want to get your thoughts as we end. Another team that I considered but just couldn't do it because there's so much projection that could end up being a top 10 offensive line is Oregon. That's another one where there's just too much G5 to P4 jumps and new guys. They're a team that could end up making me look like, dude, why did you not have them in your top 10? But there's just too much projection for me to put them in there in the top 10. But that's another talented offensive line that could maybe be in the they have much better argument to be in the top 10 than does Texas, in my opinion.
Well, I agree. I also think the system that they're going to run out there in Eugene is going to benefit a newer offensive line more so than what Texas is going to have to deal with down in the SEC. And they have to replace starters too, but I'm with you. I'm not at that level of projection yet with Oregon either.
PFF, by the way, had Alabama number 1, Utah number 2, Florida number 4, Oregon 5, Auburn 7. And I looked at Auburn. They're not here. They have Miami 8, Notre Dame 9, Clemson 10. Their honorable mention team is Penn State. How you have Alabama 1 and Penn State not even in your top 10 just is all you need to know about an organization that thinks SMU has a 3 times better odds to win the title than Notre Dame, that Duke and Iowa and Washington all have better odds to win a championship this year than Notre Dame. That's why I keep telling people, outside of their data collection, which is pretty good, they're not to be taken seriously when it comes like rankings and when your whatever simulation kicks back that Duke has a 2-time better chance of winning a title than Notre Dame. It's time to change your simulation. It's time to change your criteria, because whatever you're doing is broke. When you say SMU has a 3 times better chance, you got a problem and you need to fix it. Iowa has a 2 times better shot to win the championship than Notre Dame. Like, not conference championship. I'd say their odds to win a conference championship are about the same. But to win a national championship, Iowa's 2 times better than Notre Dame. Duke has better chance than Notre Dame. You got to stop. You got to start looking in the mirror and saying, do we want to still have credibility or not? And if you do, then you got to look at your formula and say, yeah, we got to change something. When you don't have Penn State as a top 10 offensive line, you got to be able to look at your formula and say, we're doing something wrong here, and it's got to get addressed.
All right.
It's a good way to end the show, don't you think?
We're going to end it right there.
Good rant.
We're going to end it right there because I have another show.
I dropped my mic, but this is just bought this one, and I don't want to
don't break the new mic. Don't do that. Just set it down nicely.
I did. I dropped it really nicely.
Yeah, there you go. You got to drop it with finesse. All right, well, that's going to do it for the offensive line not preview. It's the top 10 offensive lines in college football. And Trevor and Brian both put theirs out, had some agreements, had some disagreements, and that's what makes it fun. So really appreciate everybody hanging out with us. Make sure you hit that like button on the CFP Nation show. Appreciate that very much. Make sure you subscribe to the CFP Nation show as well on your podcasts, on the YouTube, all of the above. We're trying to grow this channel, and it's a lot of fun. So just a lot more college football material over there, not Notre Dame specific. So make sure you check that out. And of course, if you want intel and college football talk, you got to check out the premium message boards at boards.irishbreakdown.com. So for Trevor and Brian, I'm Vince, and we will talk to you next time on the Irish Breakdown podcast. Have a good night.